So welcome everyone. This is Conversations with Trish and Chris, and we have a very, very special guest with us here today, Scott Anders. Scott has been in the business of creating and generating an online business for under 12 months. Would you say, Scott, under 12 months?
Yeah.
And I won't share where he is from because I'd like Scott to share a little bit about your background, your story, where you're from in the world. And I think we'll just go with the flow. So, Scott, welcome, and just share us a little bit about your background and your story and how it's led you to where you are today, and that's creating and developing a successful online business.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here, first of all. Always so excited to connect with you two wonderful ladies. It's been since, I guess September that we saw each other when we met on a little trip. So I was born up in Colorado. I won't tell you what year.
We
respect your privacy on that one.
My parents were both from Missouri, and when I was about 7 years old, my parents moved the family lock, stock, and barrel back to a rural community in Missouri where I pretty much grew up. And so I was raised very much in a blue-collar American environment. Most of the folks I grew up just outside of Kansas City, Missouri, and the automobile manufacturers were going strong there in that area, and a lot of folks worked there. My dad was a truck driver for Safeway Foods. That segment of our population has a very, how would I put it? There's a common set of beliefs that we can associate with those Midwestern towns such as what I grew up in. And I felt like as a kid I had a pretty good upbringing. And consequently, I had identified with a lot of labels, if you will, right? Blue collar, Christian, blah, blah, blah. And so I was pretty much a typical guy for, having grown up that way. But then I joined, when I got out of high school, I got married immediately. And it was 13 months later I was a father. So
wow. I'm
a 19-year-old. I'm a 19-year-old kid who still wet behind the ears myself, and I've got a wife and a daughter. I was working as a machinist at the time. I had been in that job for a couple years. I actually started it in the middle of my senior year in high school. So I was working as a machinist, and I guess I did that for about 3 or 4 years, and then decided that I wanted to go off to a Bible college for a year or two. So I spent a couple of years I spent 2 years in Bible college, and I was actually preaching, right? I married a preacher's daughter, by the way, so that can kind of help explain how I went in that direction. But then I came back. Oh, and by the way, while I was there, I was building houses as I was, I had a full-time student schedule, but I also, had to work. So I was building houses, and then I came back and went back to work as a machinist. And, was just, at that age, you're still trying to figure a lot of things out. And I really was just feeling the pressure as a young man to provide for my family, And I started looking at the military as a solution to just, bring that, that secure paycheck and good benefits. And, I was still raised very much with the idea of retirement, and back in those days in the early 80s, in the U.S. anyway, the old pension model that big industries had built themselves around, that my dad was relying on as a truck driver, was kind of crumbling. The forest industry, it started crumbling. The steel industry, the car manufacturers, all these big major industrial companies were struggling to maintain the pension, right? And so my dad, even as a truck driver, had to retire early in order to basically avoid some of the pitfalls that came about with these crumbling industries.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of when the 401k model was starting to I guess be not necessarily developed, but they started pushing the 401k and personal responsibility and retirement and all that. And here I was, running off to the Army, and who offers a better pension plan than the U.S. Army, right? And so my plan was, hey, I'll just do this for 20 years and I'll still be a pretty young man, and I'll get a retirement. I'll go do something else. Well, I got talked into, at this, pretty much for most of my life, I was making all my decisions based on money, right? And not in terms of making a lot of it, but just getting by. Okay, so that tells you a lot about the mindset that I had around money and the decision-making process that was continually getting me in trouble, and also contributing to the pressure I was feeling to be a provider, right? So I joined the Army. My intent was to fly helicopters when I went to the recruiter, and I didn't meet the qualifications, and I let the recruiter talk me into becoming a linguist. And I remember telling him I had enough wherewithal that I knew that, and I had some friends who'd been in the military, that I knew that being stationed in Korea meant being separated from my family for that entire year. And that was the last thing I wanted. And so I told my recruiter, I don't want Korean as my language, because you don't get to pick the language. They assign it to you. And he said, well, based on your test scores, you'll get one of these European languages, right? Well, imagine my disappointment when 6 weeks into my basic training, they assigned me the Korean language.
Wow. Oh.
And so rather than just deliberately, it was a 47-week intensive immersion course in Monterey, California, to to learn Korean. And, my work ethic, which was very strong from my parents, just wouldn't allow me to fail. Even though the implications were, okay, you're going to be separated probably every other year for a year at a time from your family for the rest of this 20-year career, right? But I passed the course, actually did pretty well at it, and really my wife and I just said, hey, we'll make the best of this, right? So anyway, after about 10 years, it really had pretty much destroyed my family, and I had a situation with one of my kids that really just forced me to make the decision to end my military career. And by then I was here where I live now in Arizona, in southeastern Arizona. So I got out. I got a job actually as a defense contractor doing testing of imagery systems and signals intelligence systems. My background was signals intelligence with the military. I was a voice interceptor. And so I got this job, had no idea really even how much to ask for in terms of salary, right? And like I pretty much anyone could have predicted, knowing my mentality around money, I asked for way too little money, and they were only too happy to pay me that little amount, right? So that's what got me into the defense acquisition industry. And after 3 years, I was asked by another organization to take a government position with them, doing the same type of work. So it was kind of it was good for me because it allowed me to buy back my military time as a soldier toward a civilian retirement with the Army. So I did that. And so in 2002, I started a career as a civilian with the Army. I felt really fortunate because I didn't have a college degree of any kind. I just approached everything with to be a problem solver and use a little common sense. And I managed to perform in engineering roles for the rest of my civilian career. So anyway, my first marriage had crumbled about the time I was getting out of the military, and it was only about 3 years after that I got married for the second time, and that marriage only lasted 3 years. I was a very unconscious person, right? I was, and not unlike a lot of the people out there in this world today, right? I mean, identified with labels and all these things. And going through my second divorce literally just crushed me. I was suicidal, or nearly suicidal, for about 8 or 10 months. I mean, I was just all I could bear. And and really working through all of that just brought me to a whole new awareness, right? So as a soldier, as an Army civilian, I was quite dedicated to my profession. You know, I was patriotic. I was all of those things that you might expect in the typical Army employee. And almost overnight, as I was coming to this new awareness, as a result of my processing of the grief of my second divorce, I suddenly found myself very much at odds with what I was doing professionally, because I started to see the madness of war, and how human beings enact such suffering on themselves and others through our institutions and our rigidly held beliefs, and so thus began this great struggle for me, idealistically.
Yeah.
But the problem was, I had really worked myself into, I was the only person doing what I did for the Army for a period of over 10 years. That was the case. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that I had invented a process for testing the products that we were required to test in that particular arena. I had invented an entirely new process for the Army. And it's kind of one of those things where all the knowledge is right here, and there was no institutional knowledge. Even if they'd wanted to get rid of me, they probably wouldn't have done it, because no one could step in and fill my shoes. But I enjoyed the complete trust and confidence of the people I worked for. Nobody was in my business. I mean, I had it super, super good, and I got really comfortable. And, for quite a few years, I was making a low 6-figure a year salary. I had no kids at home. It was just like a super easy way to live for me. And so, and I was throwing money at my 401k back in '08. I, like everybody else, I saw my 401k pretty much evaporate because of the crash. And it took quite a few years to build that back up. But I was never somebody who paid a lot of attention to that, right? I just did what they told me to do. Put your money in there, we'll match it. And when you're ready to retire, you'll be hunky-dory, right? Well, as this need to separate myself from the madness of war kept wearing on me over the years, I started really looking for a way out. And when I looked at other jobs, other industries, and just transferring my skills into another employee job, all I could see I was doing was just trading one set of problems for another, right? And I realized, you're never more than 2 or 3 degrees removed from some sort of insanity in most jobs anyway, right? So it's not like one is more noble than another, right? And for a while, I just decided, hey, I have to just accept the fact that that's how it is, and I can just come to peace. I need to come to peace with what I'm doing. And I just couldn't get there. It just, every time I contemplated a young man or a woman signing up to go off to a foreign land and put their life on the line for something they really didn't even understand the intricacies of, it broke my heart. I lost friends over there. One friend in particular was literally on the verge of retirement and dropped his retirement paperwork, and they wouldn't let him retire. They sent him over to the theater, and he died over there, leaving a wife and I think it was 4 kids, a 9-year-old boy, and believe me, I'm not preaching and I'm not judging anyone who can serve and serve honorably and willingly. That's not what this conversation is about. It's just about where I was and my need to do something more nurturing for myself and humanity. And yet, my tiny comfort zone, right? My attachment to the idea of retirement, my addiction to a steady paycheck, all of these things were keeping me stuck in a place where, I mean, talk about somebody who was unhappy. I wasn't unhappy with the work. I really enjoyed the work. But in my core, in my being, it was like, what are you doing? You're getting up every day and you're doing this thing that is eating your soul away, right? You're sacrificing a piece of yourself every time you do this. And so I started eventually looking at my retirement seriously. I started breaking it down and analyzing where it was going to get me if I, went to retirement age. And I realized that there's no way somebody's going to retire on this, right? And that's if it performs optimistically. And as a government employee in the U.S., I had a pension plan, Social Security, and a 401k. Most people don't have all that. They have one or the other or nothing.
Yeah.
And so even with the optimal situation that I had, it wasn't going to work out. And so I started reading books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which just opened my eyes to so many things. And that's when I really set my course to figure out a way to walk away. So that was probably in about early 2015, I think. So I started dabbling in real estate. I started taking I went and traded out of my car payment. I started just slashing expenses so I could come up with the investment capital, to build a business in real estate investing. Flipped a house later that year and got an opportunity to take an early retirement at a pretty substantial penalty. But because of the cuts in the defense budget, I was a highly paid employee. I was maxed out in my position in terms of the pay grade that I was in.
Yeah.
And I had been given very, very nice compensations for my performance over the years, to where I was making, I think at the time, $108,000 a year. So, I was just totally all in on trying to figure out a way to get out. So I just had turned, what was it at the time? I had just turned 53, I think it was. And they offered an early retirement, and I just met the minimum qualifications for time in service and age. And I said, this is it, and what it really came down to was, I remember having this discussion with myself mentally so many times, to the point where it just was like, enough is enough. Stop bitching about the madness of war and all the things you don't like about, and that you can't agree with, and just be the change you want to see in the world. Stop this, your words are empty until you find the courage to do what it is you say you want to do. Shit or get off the pot was basically what I was saying. And I'm sorry for putting it that way, but that's how I was talking about it. It's like, just be the change you want to see. You won't change the world sitting in your desk every day talking about the madness of this. So, I was like, I'm going to let go of the whole idea of retirement. And it occurred to me, what if I could create an income or multiple streams of income that made the very idea of retirement obsolete? And that was a huge aha moment for me. Why couldn't I do that? Right? So I dropped my retirement paper, and in January of 16, I walked away from my job. 2 days later, I bought 2 houses to flip. I liquidated my 401k with the intent there was to keep that money moving in real estate deals. But it didn't work out that way. I was in a very, very tough market. I couldn't keep my money moving fast enough. And I got taxed very heavily. I paid a lot of money in tax. And, my savings were dwindling over time. I got trapped in a couple of deals for about 8 months that I just couldn't get, there were delays after delays after delays. And also I was learning, wow, I hate this business. Everybody's just in it for themselves. They don't give a crap about what anybody else makes. I mean, I wasn't running into a lot of people that I was excited to do business with. And so way back when I first got started in investigating entrepreneurialism and was reading a lot of Robert Kiyosaki's stuff, I actually joined one of Robert's real estate investment courses with a mentorship. At the same time, I did a mentorship with Robert's tax advisor, Tom Wheelwright. And Tom took a different approach to wealth development than Robert did. And Tom would have all of his clients take a Colby index, which is a behavioral analysis, so that they could use the information from that to kind of steer their decision in terms of the asset class that they would best be suited for. Well, Tom looked at my behavioral assessment and said, you'd be really good at an online business. And I was like, that's not appealing to me whatsoever. Okay. I'm all about real estate right now. Thanks a lot, Tom. We'll talk about this another time. So I went off to do real estate. And as real estate was not going so well, I started thinking about what Tom said. And so I started investigating affiliate marketing. And everything I was turning up on it appealed to me in terms of the methodology, but I wasn't finding anything that was showing me that I could make the kind of money I needed to make at affiliate marketing, that it just wasn't turning me on in that respect. And so it had been a few months at that time that I hadn't done any more real estate deals, mainly just to avoid being taxed anymore. I was getting taxed at like 35% at that point, and doing another deal just didn't make sense. Right? So here I was, kind of eating into my savings more and more, really just becoming disillusioned with real estate, but still being committed to entrepreneurship. And I was down in Mexico last year and I met some people from Canada, and really, really struck up a fast friendship with them right off the bat. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that we all, we were able to talk about subjects like consciousness and Eckhart Tolle and Abraham Hicks and those kinds of things. And I confided in Simon, was the guy's name. I said, Simon, for a while, I felt like I lived this perfect life. And I really did feel like I was living my ideal day almost every day. I was meditating, I was exercising, I was eating right. I was waking up in gratitude, and spending 20 to 30 minutes before I ever left my bed just in gratitude. But money wasn't flowing to me. And I knew I had some sort of a blockage in my psyche or my energy that was keeping money from coming to me. And so I confided in Simon. I said, all these things are perfect, but money's not flowing. You got any ideas? And so he asked me some questions, and we talked for a while, and he said, you know what? You've never told the universe what you want. And I thought about that, and I was like, he's right. I haven't told the universe what I want. I'm working my ass off, but I haven't really asked the universe for its help, right?
Mm.
And so I came back. He gifted me this book. Up until that time, actually, I'd never heard of Abraham Hicks. So I have to retract my previous statement. We didn't talk about Abraham Hicks. We talked about other authors.
Yeah.
And so he gifts me this book, asking it is free, and it is given. And I take it home, and I start reading it, which prompted me to get on YouTube and start exploring videos from them. So I'm back from Mexico for like 3 weeks, and this ad pops up on my YouTube channel or on my screen as I'm watching Abraham Hicks. And these two lovely young ladies from Australia pop up on the screen, and I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I clicked the ad. I just thought, these are delightful, right? I've never clicked on an ad in my life. Are you kidding me? So,
I just want to put in a disclaimer there that it wasn't us. There were
no,
another two younger
but if it had
Australian ladies.
If it had been, and so I just I started exploring an opportunity that led me into the affiliate marketing arena, into a higher ticket model that did promise to generate the kind of income that I needed, although at that time I didn't realize how much. And after really just a very short period of time, after having been introduced to that business model, I almost ran away, right? Because you do your Google searches and you come up with negativity on people, and this guy says it's a scam, and this guy says something bad about it, right? And I pride myself on being a good researcher. And I said, no, you're not taking somebody's word for this. You asked the universe, it delivered an opportunity, and you're going to see this through, at least to the point where you're going to make a rational and educated decision on it. So I sat in on a webinar with some kids who'd done very well at the business. Actually, the kids that ran that ad that I responded to. And they shared a bit of the metrics around the business. And that was all a guy like me needed, because I'm a data analyst, right? And I'm all about investment at this point. So I'm like, I took that and I just ran with it. And I built a tool in Excel that allowed me to break the business model down. And I was so amazed at what I was seeing. I was absolutely 100% all in. And so the rest is history. Here I am. I'm so excited about building my business and how it's changed my life every day. Has it been easy every day? No. I've had to deal with fear thoughts, anxiety. Oh my God, if I run out of money, what's going to happen before I, start cash flowing in my business? And all these things, that the egoic mind tries on you to keep you stuck and playing small. But fortunately, my commitment was stronger than my fear and my ego's voice. And, over time, it's just been a process of quieting that voice and acknowledging that it's there, but, thanking it for its not so valuable opinion and stepping back into fear once again, right? And constantly moving in that direction, because I know that's where growth is, and that's where reward is, and that's where life changes in positive ways. And I have so many wonderful examples of people who've gone ahead of me, and people like you guys who are walking the path in parallel with me, who just give, they give me so much inspiration. As I'm heading down this path, it's like, who cares what the end result looks like? The journey is fantastic.
Yeah.
You know?
It's interesting you say that, because I was going to ask you what's your number one, what's the best thing that you've gotten out of this journey that you've been on? And I'd be really, really interested in that, in your answer to that, Scott.
That's a great question. And it's a little bit hard to say one thing, but I would say it has to be the personal growth. You know, there are lots of ways out there to make money. Okay. But as I discovered, some of them aren't worth pursuing because of the energy of the people that you come in contact with. It's, you know, to me, initially, it was about finding a way to make money. It's not so much about that now. Yes, I have a practical need to make money. We all do.
Yeah.
But it's about, for me, getting out of bed every day and feeling the excitement of being able to take something, an opportunity like this, out there to the world and connect with people all over the planet with something that literally can change their lives.
Yeah.
That's better than anything I ever brought to this world as a soldier, right? I believed in very much the same way in my work as a soldier that I was helping people.
Yeah.
And in a lot of respects, I was. Well, I realized really just quite recently that even though I reached a place where I could no longer be a part of the madness of war, that sense of serving people and that sense of growing as a human being had been absent for a long time. And to experience the personal expansion by, like I say, stepping into fear every day and constantly just, I mean, challenging everything that comes up. Just try to knock me down. Just try to stop me.
Yeah.
You will, I'm in. You can't do it. You can't beat me now, right? The universe has got my back.
Yeah.
And so to be able to connect with people, and a lot of them who have the same kind of mentality, they just need a little bit more encouragement, you know, to step into that fear. It is so freaking exciting to do that with people and just watch their faces light up when they see the potential of the business and watch their growth. You know, in this community, we share a lot of tears together. We share a lot of struggle. We share a lot of joy and triumph. And I woke up one day and all of a sudden I had more than 200 friends probably scattered across this globe who were just like brothers and sisters to me.
Yeah.
That was freaking phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know?
It is. It's an incredible insight to people, knowing that there are people out there that are just like you, that you can connect with and share your experiences with. It's just phenomenal, like you said, incredible.
Yeah.
Scott, we met in Phoenix. It was an incredible experience. It was all about people coming together, like-mindedness and connecting. We connected immediately, and we talk about that a lot in our business, in our online business. We talk about it to team members coming through. We talk about the importance of values. And I see spotted behind you all of your values being discipline and integrity and gratitude. And what's powerful about that is throughout your conversation here with us today, those words have come up several times. And I also noticed that, you know, throughout your journey, there was such a strong level of loyalty and commitment. And they were the two words that I wrote down here. And it sort of correlates to that word discipline that's behind you as well. And I think discipline sort of sums up that journey pre-online business, that level of loyalty and commitment that it requires to sustain something for 10 years, to be in something for 10 years. And, you know, for you to make that decision to then transition out of that, you could have done that in 2 years, but no, it was 10 years. And I connect with that because I'm very similar. That sense of loyalty and commitment, and you'll see it to the end, and you'll make sure when you talk about dedication and drive and ensuring that you see it through. I think it's really reflective of your values. And as online business owners, we didn't understand the importance of our values back then, and now we do, and how important that is, and how you weren't connecting fully to, and I see another word is connection, throughout your values. That whole journey of, say, 40 years prior, same as us, didn't understand, didn't know, didn't understand why we were out of sync or out of alignment or not connecting or not finding what it is that we want. And now all of a sudden, a very short 2 years, we've learned so much in a road that's so traveled, as they say, about our values. How important are your values to your journey right now?
Well, I mean, what you're bringing up now is so huge. You know, this is a product of what I've learned over the past less than a year. You know, actually, going through that self-discovery process of really connecting with those things in myself. And you're right. For so much of my life, these have been my values. I just wasn't consciously aware of it until I did the work of trying to, you know, discover that myself and really embracing who I was, not, you know, letting go of false pretenses and expectations that other people have of us, and just being authentically us, being okay with that. In fact, being empowered by that. So when I talked about the self-growth being the most important part, you've hit the nail right on the head. It's all about those values and being in integrity with those. And how important? I mean, it's everything. Because authenticity, here's what I've learned. Every single person on this planet was literally created and gifted to come into this physical realm and serve the rest of us with their unique gifts. How many of us are actually doing that out there? We deny our gifts. We take on a false persona in so many cases, and then we wonder why things aren't flowing to us. Because we're not doing what the universe brought us here to do. We're in denial of our mission statement, right? We're hiding from the fact that we're this or that because we don't want to show it to anybody else because we're ashamed of it. When in fact, our true power is in embracing that. You know, one thing I've said to people, and this was a realization I got as a non-commissioned officer, leading soldiers. In the Army, everything's structured, right? You get soldiers assigned to you as a leader. Whether they like you or not, you're their leader. True leaders don't get to pick their followers. True leaders step out as authentic human beings, vulnerable, you know, no pretenses, and their followers come find them, right? Or the universe brings them to you, right? So the challenge is to step into your leadership role, to let go of the fear about all the nonsense that you've come to believe about yourself that doesn't measure up, that isn't adequate, right? That somebody made a comment about at some point in your life and planted that seed of doubt, and social norms that make you feel as though you're not good enough. It's about letting go of all that crap and being confident that you're here just as you're created to be a great leader. And you're not here to serve everyone. You're here to serve the people who will identify with you as their leader. If you're afraid to step out there and be that leader, don't expect the universe to bring you things. Don't expect the universe to reward you for hiding from your responsibility to the whole. Don't be a taker, be a giver, you know?
Yeah.
There's something about an online business model that allows you to be the person that you want to be. There is something about an online business model that allows you to bring all of your gifts and talents to the world. There is something about an online business model that just allows all of this to happen. People in the early stages don't understand how that's going to happen. It's not until you really venture down that journey that you really then start to discover how your talents and abilities and skills, everybody's talents, abilities and skills, can benefit the world, and how the money is a byproduct of that value. You're an absolute example of that. We had a conversation before this conversation started, and you are just such an example of that happening by providing the value and providing that value first, and having what's called an online business model to facilitate that process. It's just like a structure or a shell for you to really develop as an individual and to create that branded product of who you are, and it's authentic to who you are. That's what's so exciting about it.
It kind of makes it easy, doesn't it?
It does.
It's easy to get out of bed. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy to get out of bed and get your shoulder pushing against this thing.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't feel like work, you know?
No, it just doesn't. And I've been saying that myself recently. You know, people say, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Are you working again?" I said, "It's not work. It's what I love to do. It's not work. I don't call it work." So,
Chris and I are working the business literally at all different times, hours. And it's interesting because I'll have dinner and then I'll text and I'll say, should we hop on a call? And we just hop on a call and we operate the business for an hour. We'll do some analysis for an hour. And it's very cool. It's cool to be working with individuals like you, Scott, from all around the world, right?
Yeah.
And from the UK, from the US, from Canada, Australia.
Mm-hmm.
How powerful. People that are completely aligned with your values. It's just awesome. It really is.
It certainly is. And I was thinking about this a while back, actually. I remember when I was an employee, how, you know, I was up at 3:30, 4 in the morning. I was at the office by 6. You know, a lot of times wasn't home till 4:35 in the afternoon. And I didn't want to hear from anybody after hours. Don't call me about work. I don't want to talk to anybody, right? And now it's like somebody will reach out to me out of the blue. Like this happened yesterday. A guy I've never met who just got involved in the business connected with me on Skype because he saw me on a video talking. And what I said resonated with him, and he reached out. And I spent almost 2.5 hours on the phone with this guy. He lives in the UK. He's a young guy, 26 years old, and just looking for some advice, you know. Now, when I was an employee, I would have been like, dude, stop bothering me. I don't want to talk to you. Call me during business hours, right? That's the old me. Now it's like, oh, damn, dude, we've been on here 2.5 hours. It's like past midnight there, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to keep talking, right?
Yeah.
And it just, there's no way you can call this work, right?
No.
To me, it's service. When I get an email, and I get frequent emails these days from folks that I'm connecting with through my advertising and whatnot, and And when they take the time to respond in any way to my emails, to me, it's just proof that you never know whose life you're touching.
That's right.
You don't get to choose that either, right?
Yeah.
I had a guy who served under me in the Army that I hadn't seen in years, who called me back in early part of 2010 and said, "I'd like you to come and speak at my retirement ceremony." I was like, whoa,
Wow.
And so a lot of that happens in the day-to-day of this business, where someone out of the blue reaches out, someone you've never met in this case, who says, wow, what you said on that video or said in that email was so powerful and touched me in this way. Now, some people reach out and they're quite venomous. You're shysters. You're trying to rip us off. I can't do anything about the negative people in this world.
No,
I
that's
know
right.
what my motives are, and I'm secure in the pureness of those motives. But those I can brush off in the context of the magnificent connections that I've been able to make with positive, uplifting people all over this world. And I mean, really, it's like, it's law of attraction in action. There's just no way around it.
Yeah,
this is law of attraction at work, and we watch it happen every day.
Yeah.
That's another big reason why this online business model is so brilliant. It's because it's so in alignment with the, I don't know whether it's the right word, but the law of attraction. It's in alignment with those
Natural
factors
laws.
where you take the action, you do the daily action, you do that every day, and you let it go, because they always say the market will decide. Right? Go put your advertisement out there, put your advertising, put your video out there, and the market will decide. Well, at the end of the day, it comes down to law of attraction, doesn't it? And the vibrational frequency that you put out there and you put into your advertising, the market will decide. Well, it's really about
the universe will decide.
Exactly. You see, exactly.
The universe will decide.
It's in such perfect alignment with that thinking, with that methodology.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I'd never really thought about that before, but that is so true. It's a bit ironic that we're students of marketing in this business, and we're practicing marketers.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, a person's decision to align with us and begin this journey very rarely comes down to our marketing prowess. It comes down to the fact that we connect energetically with certain people, and they sense that we share values that are near and dear to them. And that's what brought most of us here and kept us involved.
That's right. It's about, being comfortable with that person. That message resonates with me. I feel comfortable. I can have a conversation with that person. And that's the connection that you're talking about. Being comfortable, being real, being authentic, all of those characteristics, I suppose, and just connecting with people. Everyone has the ability to connect with another person. And if you can connect with one, you can connect with two, and it goes on and on. You can connect to 1,000. So it's infinite.
I think if you take it even a step further back, before even the connection, the physical, what you would call a physical connection in our world is video to video or person to video. Even if you take it a step further back and you're doing the work and you have the right intention and you're on a very powerful high vibrational frequency, energetically you're putting out exactly what you feel is the right place to be, it's inevitable. It's nearly guaranteed, even though we don't like using those words guaranteed. It's guaranteed that the people will arrive even before we've made that you know,
Connection.
do you know where I'm coming from here with this conversation?
I do.
It's going
You
a little deeper
you
here.
can see the smile on your face.
It's
Yeah, I
just
know
going
exactly.
a little deeper. It's
Yeah.
even before, as long as you're doing the daily actions, you're taking those steps. The intent is the right intent, and the vibrational frequency. You feel good every single day, every single moment, as much as you can. Build it, and they will come. Is literally that. You don't even have to, at the time of them reaching the video, it's already happened prior to the video reaching them, to the video advertising reaching them. That was
it's be, do, have.
Yes.
It's be, do, have.
Yes.
It's being in happiness, being in joy, being in love with what you're doing, and then action coming from that, as opposed to the MO that I use most of my life. Do, have, be.
Yes.
I'll be happy if I do this and I have that, right?
Yeah.
That system doesn't work. It never worked for me anyway.
Yes.
And so
I love that, Scott. Say that again. Say that again.
Be, do, have. You know,
right.
be in love with what you're doing. I think that's so important, and that's a huge lesson that I've learned in this process was, you know, I alluded a little bit to my work ethic. I joke with people, but it's really kind of true. My parents worked my brothers and I like rented mules from the time we were 4 and 5 years old. You know, when my friends were coming and knocking on the door to go play, I had to tell them I couldn't come out until all my chores were done, which usually was all day Saturday, right? So I have a little bit of baggage left from all of that I'm still dealing with, right? I've kind of lost my train of thought here where I was going with this, but it's the work ethic piece of it is, it can be so polluting to what we're actually doing here, right? I mean, this idea or this limiting belief about how hard work equals success. All the evidence in my life has come to show me that that's absolutely not the case. Hard work does not equal financial reward, right? Or I'd be rich as hell, right? I'm really good at working my ass off. I'm really good at working smarter.
Yeah.
So if it's all about hard work, I'm calling BS on that one, right? It's obviously about the energy and the intent and the purpose that we bring behind it. You know, and like we've been talking about, what about that says work? What about touching base with somebody who reached out to me on Skype that resulted in a 2.5-hour call where I really connected with this young man? What about that is work?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's incredible. It's just the most rewarding feeling that you have that connection with people that you've never met, right? So you've just seen them on calls, or you've seen them on a webinar, or you've listened to what they've said on a video somewhere, and you already have that connection, and then you have a one-on-one conversation with them, and it's mind-blowing that you can relate so easily to people because of the shared values, because of all of those factors that make up those two people. It's just incredible.
It really is, isn't it? It's almost miraculous that the people that I've met within this business, I can't think of a single person with whom I've had a negative feeling or emotion or an intuition about them. It's like every single person I've come in contact with is carrying this positive energy, and it's almost like we've known them our whole lives.
That's true.
Yeah.
True.
And you just can't get enough of that kind of energy, right?
That's very true.
Yeah.
Scott, can I ask you, which was really impactful for me during our conversation here, was you mentioned books a lot. Books has been a massive part of my journey, and it was the beginning of my, I would say, entrepreneurial personal development journey. What book, and if it's anything like me, there are a few books that stand out, but there are some standouts, right, that really turned up at a real pivotal point in your life. What are some of those books that really, really came to you or turned up?
Yeah. Interesting you asked that question, because I was not a person who ever read books unless they were how-to books. So, and I'm serious about this. I might have read one book, which was a story about a guy that had an altercation with some game wardens. And I read this book when I was in my early 20s, and that was like the last book I'd ever read. So, until I was working through the difficulty of my second divorce. And so I'm going to tell you a story if we have time for that, because it's really a miraculous occurrence in my life. So I was really still very much grieving after several months, and I'm sitting at the airport in Charleston, South Carolina. I was on a business trip, getting ready to head back to Tucson, which isn't far here from where I live. And I'm sitting in a Chili's 2 restaurant. That's the smaller version of a full-blown Chili's in the U.S. And across the causeway was a bookstore. And I'm sitting there literally like this, trying to hide the fact from the other patrons that I'm literally sobbing about the anguish and the grief, that I'm still trying to deal with. And I'm just telling myself, dude, you got to get it together here, man. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to walk over to that bookstore. You're not going to shop around. You're going to walk to the first book you see that catches your eye. You're going to take it off the shelf. You're going to walk over to the counter. You're going to pay for it. And you're going to get on your flight, and you're going to read that book all the way home. So I did. I walked in the bookstore. I walked straight to a corner shelf. I pulled the first book that caught my eye off the shelf, and I paid for it. I didn't put that book down for another 18 months. That book was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It was exactly the message I needed to hear at that time. And it radically transformed my worldview. It brought me from suicidal to absolute bliss. I literally lived in a state of bliss for about 1.5 years. That was almost unshakable. I wasn't able to maintain that level of blissfulness, right? Life had to continue at some point.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that was the first book that really spoke to me and caused radical transformation. And the second was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was the first. When I made the decision that I was going to seriously consider or seriously delve into entrepreneurialism, I did a Google search one day and I ordered about 5 books. I just did top books on entrepreneurialism. And the first 5 search results that came up went on Amazon. I ordered them. One of those was The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, which I think that was the first one I read. And I appreciated that book, but I didn't have a lot of context as I read it in terms of entrepreneurship. So a lot of it didn't really speak to me like it might have. But the second book was Robert's book, and that was game changing because I fit that employee description so well. And I mean, every page of that book was just like solid gold to me. And I could see the vision of, well, first of all, I could see the despair of being an employee, right? And all the disadvantages of it that I'd been unknowingly subjecting myself to for all those years. It was the first book that got me thinking about, wow, I could create multiple income streams, I could obliterate the idea of retirement. What do I need retirement for? I could live so much better than what retirement represents, right? And I could do it sooner. And I could show my family how to do it, right?
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, definitely those two books. And probably the third one would be Deepak Chopra's Peace is the Way.
Okay.
And that book was the book that really opened my heart to the rest of humanity and brought a lot of empathy and compassion and understanding to the state that humans are in, to the point where I could begin, for really the first time in my life, to really begin to connect with people on an emotional and spiritual level that I hadn't known to that time. So, yeah.
It's interesting because I look behind me now, and on my bookshelf, on that top shelf there, I think 2 along, is the whole Rich Dad series. So it's interesting how like-mindedness, we are attracted to very similar books. And the other thing that really stands out for me too is that there's 2 separate genres, isn't there? There's the entrepreneurial, money-making business model, right? And then there's the mindset, personal development, personal growth, spirituality, 2 separate genres that sometimes, that actually not sometimes, all the time cross over and mesh and meld together. And the community that we're part of, this online business community that we're part of, do both of them so incredibly well and mold and mesh them 2 together, because they're just so important. Like you said that you were part of the Robert Kiyosaki coaching program. I was part of another real estate entrepreneurial coaching program, sort of high level, and took me to places within the real estate industry which I'd never been before. Very powerful. It was missing the spirituality, personal growth.
Yeah.
And that's where I was missing this whole giving back and the values and attracting people that align with you. That was the big missing piece, which this community is really developing both. The entrepreneurial, making money, creating wealth is not the only journey, right? It's not the only book genre that you read.
Yeah.
You have to step into this path of the serving of others and providing value and giving back. And
there's no fulfillment without that.
That's right.
Yeah. And what I'm seeing, I stay connected to Robert's newsletters. I get his newsletters all the time and other mailings. And you're seeing in Robert's material every single day, it's more and more of consciousness and awareness and giving back and serving others. And it's less and less about the money and more about the values and fulfillment. And
it's about the evolution then, isn't it? It's the evolution of that business model too, because they're seeing now that people need not just part of the story, they need the whole story, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Really
I can't even imagine any kind of entrepreneurial endeavor without a heavy infusion of the spirituality aspect of it. To me, it would all be emptiness. It just, folly, if you will. The spirituality brings true meaning to what we're doing and how we're trying to serve people.
Yeah.
As well as each other.
Agree. Yeah.
This is a very big question, Scott, and I've asked this of everyone on our conversations, and that is, actually, it's a bit of a traditional question too. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I get that reaction every time too.
Yeah. It's pretty exciting, actually, to think about that, because I know it's going to be big. I've spent so many years putting myself and my family through such sacrifice based on my limiting beliefs. And finally, just recently, started dreaming big again. And I've never been a material person. It's not material possessions that I've ever been motivated by, but that was largely because I just stopped dreaming because those things were out of reach. Recently, I gave myself permission to visualize, without any judgment at all, what would my life look like? And I started seeing a 5-bedroom, 4-bath house in the desert foothills here, in southeastern Arizona. Beautiful landscape, a pool, and a live-in maid, right? And just seeing my kids and my grandkids visiting with me there. Yeah. And I've never been able to do that for them before. Today I live in an 865 square foot, 2-bedroom house that I bought 10 years ago. Mm. I don't have the luxury of having people come visit me. Mm. I don't have the luxury of hosting the entire family without everyone just being on top of each other. Mm. So I visualize that home every day. In fact, I spent an hour or so today just looking up images of desert homes that Beautiful. I could visualize every day, because I'm learning the power of visualization. Yeah. But traveling, I've been to a few locations I definitely want to make frequent stops. I'm in love with Zihuatanejo, Mexico, a beautiful little bay on the Pacific coast in Mexico. Traveling the world and visiting all the friends that I've made on this journey, people in Australia, people in the UK, people in Canada. Mm. I love wine. And I've always wanted to go to South America, like Chile in particular. I see hosting my family on a nice pleasure boat. One dream I've had for years is to charter a yacht out of San Diego for my 3 sons and my son-in-law, and just take a yacht all the way down to Cabo San Lucas and fish and just drink beer and swim and dive, the whole time while we're out, and just, give that gift to them. I'm a Kansas City Royals baseball fan, right? I grew up 15 miles from the stadium. I want box seats at Kauffman Stadium so I can take my family 4 or 5 times a summer, the whole lot, all the way to Kansas City and watch a baseball game.
Cool.
Just because we can.
How cool.
That's very cool.
And have Kansas City barbecue, which we're famous for. And, cool. It's, and it's, I don't know, it's just like, just the belief now that I can actually create that for myself and my family is such an enormous gift. Because like I said, I let go of the whole idea of dreaming because life was showing me something very different before. Not because life wanted to deliver that, because I was limiting myself in that way.
That's right. Yeah.
Now I'm empowered and I know that it's completely possible. And I have a business model now that can utterly deliver that in less than 5 years, actually.
Yes.
That's great. And I want to share this because it's appropriate, and the message came to me very strongly. When Chris and I were in Phoenix with yourself, I visited with a friend. Well, actually, she came out to the hotel to make a visit with us, and her name is Barbara, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind me sharing this on this call. We were part of a mastermind group 10 years ago, and we connected with each other for the first time in a lot of years in Phoenix, and Chris got to meet her as well. She runs her own practice in actually it was Scottsdale, wasn't it?
It's Scottsdale, yeah.
So there was all these parallels because you took us out to Scottsdale as well. And she had a very powerful experience amongst our mastermind, which she shared all those years ago. She created, we talk about visualization. You were just talking about that and how powerful it is. She did a visualization board, a board where you cut out randomly pictures from magazines, random magazines, and you stick them all onto a board. She went through that whole process and stuck it up in her practice. And within weeks, a woman turned up to her office. She was looking for real estate transactions during that time. And this woman presented her with a folder with the picture of the building that she cut out randomly from a magazine and was stuck on her vision board. She freaked out, just thought, oh my goodness, and invested in that project. And so she shared that amazing story with us. Yeah. And so it's for anyone out there listening to this, it's one of the most powerful things that you can do on a daily basis. The power of that is incredible. So I just wanted to share that, as a result of that conversation, Scott. And I just want to thank you for you spending this time with us. It's always a pleasure having these conversations with you. You always provide so much incredible value. We met in Phoenix physically. We're actually going to be meeting again in 4 weeks in London. So looking forward to that. I know. How awesome is that going to be? And we're going to be different people again, right?
Yeah.
From the time we met in Phoenix to the time that we meet again in London in 4 weeks, we're going to be very different again, which is exciting. Yeah. So on behalf of Chris and I would just like to say thank you for providing your time here with us and providing value to so many people out there. Chris, is there anything you'd like to add?
I just want to say it's been eye-opening, you sharing your story with us and your life experiences with us. It's been, I've written down notes. That's how powerful it was, because there was some stuff in there that were parallel with me too, Some of your trials and tribulations were my trials and tribulations. So it's interesting, isn't it, like how we can associate that way. Anyway, I just want to say thank you for your time today, and for you sharing your story. It was really impactful. Thanks,
thank you. And I must echo my sentence. I must be the mirror. I share those sentiments with both of you, wonderful, wonderful ladies that I feel so blessed to even know and to be in your space. You both inspire me. I watch you more than you know. And
it's the way, isn't it?
Not in a stalking kind of way.
That's all right.
Please don't worry about who's looking in the window tonight. I'm so humbled by the fact that you even asked me to spend this time with you and share. I don't mind sharing my story these days, because the more of the stories that I hear from people coming into this business, the more impactful I realize every single story out there is. I'm so inspired by everybody's story. Mm-hmm. Funny that we all think we don't have anything to share.
True.
Right? That how could anyone think my journey is anything but boring, right?
True.
And yet, it's part of that service that we've been talking about. So I'm humbled to be here and in serving that way. And I look forward to being in your space again soon.
It's awesome.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Really appreciate it.